Hi, Loreen here. The next part of this training video will look at the actual physical damage to the brain, and I believe that by seeing the evidence that trauma has affected the development of the brain, it will give you solace to know that your behaviour is not because you're bad or mad, it's because you have been mentally disadvantaged. The physical damage to the brain also affects the nervous system. We have to ask sometimes, how does childhood trauma impact on brain development? Our earlier work has highlighted that the damage of growing up in a dysfunctional family appears in the physical structure of the brain. Specifically, it's caused the brain to maladapt. It's because the brain structure has been impaired that we display this complex and challenging behaviour which we feel we have no control over. This is behaviour such as procrastination, substance abuse, addictions, self-harm, depression, and many other life-debilitating actions. This is a developmental trauma. Developmental trauma is a term used to describe the impact of early repeated abuse, neglect, separation, and adverse experiences that happen within a child's important relationships. Professor Bessel van der Kolk states that this creates an assault on the child's development over time. They develop a range of unhealthy coping strategies which they believe will help them survive. They do not develop the essential daily living skills such as being able to manage impulses, solve problems, and the executive functionings that we need. The child feels they're always in danger and operate out of their primitive brain, which is down in the brainstem. And it's a part of the brain responsible for the child's survival systems and the adult of fight, flight and freeze. The child grows into an adult who's continually in survival mode, where even a raised voice or smell of aftershave can signal life or death, danger. Because little information is getting through to the higher parts of the brain to allow rationalization to happen. There's no resource available for processing and retraining or retaining new information, reasoning, sharing, or for a sense that adults may want to be positive or even neutral. Pioneering research has found that severe trauma in childhood affects a child deep into its genetic makeup and leaves him hardwired to be oversensitive to life's stresses. Neglect, which is the absence of adequate care, causes trauma in the same way as active abuse and loss. Some parts of the brain grow and develop rapidly at certain ages, and this overwhelming stress in childhood because of neglect and abuse affects the way the brain develops. During critical periods of development, trauma can badly affect different areas of the brain. Positive experience can help development, but negative experiences impair the development of the brain. So the brain has three main parts. So we've got the brain stem, which develops first. It's called the primitive brain, and it deals with sensory and motor input and survival, fight, flight, freeze. It's all about, it's wonderful, it's the computer of the body in that it makes sure that you're breathing, your heart is beating, you digest your food, you can walk from one end of the road to the other without really thinking about it. But it's also the part that makes you freeze because you've heard something that triggers a memory deep in your nervous system. And this can be the debilitating part of life. So the brainstem develops first, and it controls arousal and automatic responses. It controls your survival. Then we have the limbic region, which will develop next. This is also the emotional region. It includes the amygdala, which is a brain smoke detector again, fight or flight, and the hippocampus. and it connects the high and low parts of the brain, and it's responsible for the experience and expression of emotion and for memory. The third part of the brain is the cortex. This is responsible for thinking, learning, languages, and inhibiting inappropriate behaviour. It allows a person to reflect. It's the area for cognition and thinking. The prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain, in front of the forehead, deals with concentration and higher brain functions. Now, it's important for these three areas of the brain to work together, and it's also important for the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain to work together. But any real or perceived threat is registered in the primitive parts of the brain, the brainstem. These are closely connected, and a threat of danger sets off that fear-based survival response of fight, flight, freeze, even before our logical brain and our emotional brain can go into action and really get the facts of what the situation is. I will give you a handout as a free bonus with this so you will get the clear pictures. Now, our brain develops from the bottom up. The brain stem first, the fight, flight, freeze, then the survival functions that develop before planning and impulse control. Our brainstem works fully when we're born. The other two areas don't. And it controls, as I say, the basic survival methods such as heart rate, breathing, sleep and hunger. We can develop a memory of fear before we've even had language. It's pre-verbal, or before we can understand where the fear comes from. These memories are stored in our body as body memories in our nervous system. The prefrontal cortex and the higher brain is very vulnerable to traumatic stress. Trauma affects our ability to think. It makes us less able to learn. This is because when we're in survival mode, under traumatic stress, the lower brainstem responses predominate and impair a person's ability to be calm, to think and to reflect and respond flexibly. Trauma also affects the coordination of our nerve networks. In this way, adaptation to trauma, especially early in life, becomes a state of mind, brain and body. And it's around this which we build our life experiences, all under our conscious awareness. So now we're going to look at what actual changes occur to the brain because of childhood trauma. What are their effects? So childhood trauma can affect different parts of the brain, and this helps explain many of the challenges survivors experience. The corpus callosum, which connects the left and the right sides of the brain, is reduced. When people talk about the brain and its behaviour, it talks about the healthy parts, the traumatised parts and the survival parts. This is Franz Rupert. So when I talk to you about the corpus callosum is reduced, the effects of that is that it causes us to behave, our brain to behave in this split manner. So we have a healthy part of the brain which is, it thinks rationally, our emotions are appropriate. But we also have these two parts, survival parts and traumatised parts, and as you can see they take up much more surface area. And these lead to our negative behaviours. So this is a diagram representing what the brain does because it's damaged, and I want to show you how the damage occurs. So this is a healthy brain scan, and this is the brain of somebody just lying in a SPECT scan. It has no reason to feel frightened, no reason to feel he's in danger. So the base of his brain, the fight, flight, freeze, is very calm. There's hardly any action there. The emotional brain, very little activity there. And it's all in the logical brain where the action is, because he's just thinking logically, I'm lying here, I trust the staff. He might be thinking, I know what I want for dinner tomorrow, completely safe. So this person thinks rationally. If something happened, he would look at it, I'm in a safe arena, these people know what they're doing, so I will trust them. The traumatized brain, though, as I say, with the corpus callosum damaged, the corpus callosum is smaller, the brain itself is smaller, and the organs where it's supposed to be small is enlarged, and this is the fight, flight, freeze area. So the dominating part of a damaged, traumatized brain is fight, flight, freeze. In a healthy brain, it's a fight, flight, freeze is a much smaller area, and the corpus callosum is fully developed, not impaired. As I say, in the bonus, you'll be able to see these pictures clearly. So Tetra found that the morphology of the corpus callosum is significantly affected by early neglect, as well as physical abuse and sexual abuse. So we saw earlier the healthy brain scan. This person's lying in a scanner, trusts everyone around him, no idea that he's in any danger, and his logical brain is in control. Now the difference to a traumatized brain is this. This person's also in a scanner, excuse me, but you can see there's much more activity going on here. The base brain, fight, flight, freeze, is sending messages to the emotional brain and sending messages to the logical brain. So this person, even though he's just lying in a scanner in a hospital, is worried and feels that they're in danger. The diamond pattern in the brain usually means you've experienced an emotional trauma, and this is how our brain looks on a regular basis. I hope you've enjoyed that information. Again, I will give you the free bonus to see these pictures clearly, and our further work now is how we can calm the brain down. And this is the reason why we can't manifest, we can't imagine, we can't be creative, because we're on high alert. I look forward to sharing the next part of this work with you.